Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stefan. I'm from BMS, Marketing Research and Strategy in Munich. We are a small specialized research agency, and since mid of the 90s, I'm involved in conjoint analysis. Today, I would like to speak about ACBC and present a case study for those of you who are not so familiar with this technology and this method, to give you an insight into what it can do and what it can't really do. So Sortus Software, which you might be aware of, launched ACBC as adaptive choice-based conjoint in 2009. We were a beta tester in that process, and as many researchers, we expected a new power tool and an increased value for our project. So currently, or before that, we had a toolbox for conjoint, which consisted mainly of CBC, that's choice-based conjoint, the most used methodology. Use full profiles. We can have alternative specific designs, strong for pricing. We have a lot of good experience using HB, choice estimation, and so on. There is AC8 in the methodology, which was before CBC, the leading one. Adaptive conjoints, which can be used when you have a lot of attributes. It's not so good for price studies. And we have CV8, a traditional conjoint. And also, which is not conjoint, but quite used in the context, is MaxDiff. It's very good if you have a lot of attributes and very efficient. So where does ACBC come to or come from? The following presentation, I would like to show you and illustrate my experience with ACBC with a real study which we did for a commercial client. So what the study is about, it's a chemical product for DIY market. We have 14 attributes, including price, and many of these attributes are non-compensatory. And I think this is also one reason why Sortus came up with ACBC. In normal conjoint, you always assume that your attributes are compensatory. That means if I'm weak in one attribute, I can compensate in another attribute. But there are products where some levels or some specific attributes are a must or are definitely a no-go, and you can't compensate. And that's where the idea, or one of the reasons why they came up with ACBC. In this case, we also had a very difficult to find target group, so-called moonlighters, which use this product. So the only sample size, maximum sample size we could afford was a sample of 200 face-to-face interviews, and the objective was product development and to identify the best USP to put in the packaging. There was no real focus on price. It was rather a study to understand how should we package the product, which USPs should be used, how should we develop products in the future. So when you, I don't know if you have ever worked with ACBC, if you do an ACBC study, it's quite different to other conjoints. You have different sections. You start with a build your own section where respondents create the perfect product. You can select from all attribute levels. The attribute levels also have prices. Then you have screening sections where ACBC takes concepts which are quite near to the build your own result. And in these screening sections, you detect if some attribute levels might be unacceptable, and you prompt these and ask respondents, could it be that you never buy a black car? And also must-have questions where we detect, or the software detects, if respondents always take a same level, if that is a must-have for them. And in case of unacceptables, we leave them away. Of must-have, we always have them in the concept, so we narrow down the choice to the more relevant things. In the end of the interview, there are so-called choice tasks. It's always 3, and you take one of 3 at a kind of a tournament, and you come to a winning task. So when you see that, you could imagine that you have a lot of parameters which you can design and select in order to design the study. And you see here the parameter settings. There's a lot of settings you have to give. In this table, you see the recommendation from Sortus Software depending on number of attributes. They give you a recommendation how many screening tasks, how many must-haves, unacceptables, and so on. And when we did the study, we felt well, a bit unsure. We have 10 years experience or more with CBC, but we didn't have so much experience with ACBC. So we tried with our feeling to set these parameters, and I can tell you how we did that. So we had 13 number of attributes because that was given by the nature of the product. The customer needed these 13 attributes. We selected 8 screening tasks with 3 concepts. We thought that is sufficient. We were also looking at the interview length. When we designed it, we always tried it, and imagine how long this might take. We used only 3 must-haves and 4 must-haves and 3 unacceptables. This is less than sort of suggested, but we had a strong feeling that we didn't avoid to make it too easy to respondents to have too many unacceptables or must-haves. We also have the number of concepts in the choice task. We reduced them a little bit because we was also concerned about the interview length and number of calibration concepts. We used the Sawtooth recommendation, screen size, and the number of concepts on the screening tasks. While we looked at the screen, our attribute levels were quite long. So due to the limitation of the screen size and due to the complexity of the task, we opted for 3 concepts per task. And the attribute variation, this is how many attributes in their levels are different from the concept, the respondent, select, and the build your own section. And we didn't want to stay too close to this build your own section, so we took a little bit more than suggested by Sawtooth. And for the modification strategy, we used the Sawtooth recommendation, to be honest, just because we didn't know it better. So when we did this design, of course, we in discussion with the customers, we put a lot of prohibitions in. Prohibitions means never show this attribute level 3 from attribute 1 with attribute level 6 of attribute 5, because these were quite impossible from a technical point of view. So we put a couple of these prohibitions in, and we sent our design file to Sawtooth, and they reported us that we had a lot of problems in the design. It was not orthogonal anymore, and there is no standard tool to design to test the design efficiency in ACBC. So what we learned is to be very careful and to avoid prohibitions as much as possible. In our case, we just used 1 prohibition, and we had a good working design file. Sorry, get the next button. Just a problem of getting to the next page. Okay, there was just a delay here, sorry. Now the price, we use the price attribute, and you define a middle price, and we use the price range of plus minus 50%. We rounded every price to 99 cents prices, so it looks more market reality. The price was used also in the unacceptable section, so they could define a price threshold. And we had level prices for selected attributes in the build your own. So 7 of these 13 non-price attributes had a price tag in the build your own. Usually we do holdout tasks to validate the simulations we do. It's not easy here as in CBC, where I just put a fixed task in. So the calibration concept also is no substitute. So the solution is to take 1 random tournament question from the last part and use that as a holdout to control your mean average errors to see how good the predictability of the model is. Then we did a pre-testing. First we gave the study to the client, and everybody said, wow, this is too long, this is too complex, nobody will really be able to complete that. And when we did the real test with real respondents, we had a big surprise. The respondents liked the questions, and they found a good sense in them. And the reason when we spoke to respondents after that is that they see in the interview, and this is a big difference to CBC, they see in the interview that the interview is reacting to their answers, all the concepts are relevant. You define a must-have, you define an unacceptable, is not shown anymore, and they really were excited throughout the interviews. We used that opportunity, and we then increased the number of questions slightly, as we saw that it works so well. Then we went into the 200 face-to-face computer-assisted personal interview field, and again we got really good response. We had a lot of positive feedback from the respondents, so we call them happy respondents. They were asked the relevant questions. We got a lot of positive feedbacks, despite even that the average duration of this interview was around 30 minutes, which I would usually say for a conjoint study, this is really much too long. But this is for me one of the main takeaways also from the ACBC studies, that the interview is more relevant for respondents. The concepts we show them are more to the point, and we get more feedback from them, and they are more able to contribute into the study. So we calculated utilities. Here you see the average utilities, and all results met our common sense expectations. We had some surprises, and we got also, even with a sample size of 200, some good hints for future customer segmentation. With the price, it was more tricky. The price is a linear function, so we have a very large price interval with only few data points at the outside of the interval. This is because we have a base price, and all possible price levels are plus minus 50%. And we used then a piecewise price function with 5 data points. And you have to check your data. There's a tool you can have from Sawtooth called Get ACBC Prices to see at which areas of the price interval you have data. And we used that, and we expected here, we saw a rather flat price elasticity where we felt that it needed a calibration. And if you look at the results, the average importances of all attributes, you see that price was really the most important one. Maybe it was a little bit overestimated here, and it was not a pricing study anyway, but we calibrated the price elasticity in order to make more sense and to fit the real market current situation. We did a lot of simulations. We did a base case scenario, which was very near to current market shares, which was the price with the small sample size. Then we started to look for the best attribute levels in the simulations, and we did a profit contribution modeling, because the attribute levels, of course, have also different production costs and so on. In the end, we came up with product optimization. So we defined better products, and we also came up with a product range optimization, a different mix of products on the market. And you see on this slide here, we were able to increase the share of preference of the products, as well as the profit contribution for the client significantly. So if we look at the benefits of the study, I'm personally sure we would have been impossible to do the same thing with CBC. We were able to define new products for new product development. We were able to improve the package design, to put the right USPs on the package, and to optimize the product range, which is in the end all you need for the client side. So what did we learn from that? ACBC is intuitive to the client. My client was really able, when he saw the questionnaire, to understand how it works. They liked it very much, and it's also realistic and relevant for the respondents. It's an interview which makes fun. It's an interview where you see some progress, and you don't have the frustrations of you sometimes have in CBC studies, where respondents say, "Hey, I just said I don't want to have that, and you show it to me again." So that is a big difference. We think you can have a smaller sample size, There are some people who say you can maybe go down to 20 or 30 interviews. I'm not sure about that, but you can work with smaller sample size and you will receive reliable results. On the other hand, what is the negative area? I'm not comfortable with this price range definition. I think for pricing studies, ACVC is not the right tool. The main problem is the lack of alternative specific designs. So in the 80% of our studies, we have alternative specific designs where we have specific attributes which only occur with specific attribute levels or other attributes, or price ranges are different, or whatever. So that, and also when I talk to colleagues, that's probably the main reason why there's not more ACVC used. I think Sawtooth is working on that. The danger of prohibitions, that you really have to be careful. You have no test tool to check what your prohibitions do to the design. And again, coming to the price, the measurement and simulation of the price elasticity, I don't think ACVC is the right tool here. As a conclusion, if we look for what is the application for ACVC, I think ACVC, and maybe I'm biased because I come from that industry or from that area, I think it's very good for industrial B2B durables, where you don't have so many respondents available, where you can't go to the online panels. You might have to do, usually you have to do face-to-face interviews, which are very expensive. It's very difficult to find the respondents, so you are doomed to have a small sample size. It's also very, very good for complex product features and options, for those non-compensatory attributes I spoke about before. If you have many attributes, if you have a small sample size, now, CPI means high cost per interview or B2B market. And if you want to have a deeper insight on the individual level, so it's rather understanding individuals more deeply, more in a complex scenario than having more individually, more people, but not so deep understanding. The limitations, we have no alternative specific design. I mentioned that it's a limited graphic capability. The price elasticity was quite flat. We have a lack of experience, so we don't have a real track record, and you have a lot of difficult design decisions. Maybe they're not difficult, but I personally feel a little bit unsecure if I just make decisions which I'm not really sure, cannot really base on experience. Now, I would definitely say we have a new tool in the toolbox. ACVC is a very good extension to all the conjoint methods we have, and according to the latest report on conjoint analysis usage among Sawtooth customers, 9% of all projects are done with ACVC. So it's good for many attributes, for non-compensatory attributes. It's a realistic interview, maybe pre-comprising, good on the individual level, and good with small samples. However, I don't think that this 9% will go up a lot unless you will have alternative specific designs. Our ACVC study was a great success. It's intuitive to clients and respondents, but it will not replace CBC as some of my colleagues did, or other methods. It's just an additional tool in the toolbox for specific needs for surveys where CBC and the other methods are not able to cover the complexity of the situation and the mechanism of the market or of the attributes. So I'm looking forward to your questions, and very interested what you have to say. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thanks.